Hello, everybody. Welcome to my practice. I've been asked by the state to give a lecture, and I need to decide, is this the order I want to talk about things in? How is my pacing? Where do I need to speed up and slow down? Where am I not clear? And because I like to think aloud, I'm just going to practice. So thank you for indulging me. This is using what I learned from Avant in my free voluntary reading, also known as silent sustained reading. I'm Madame Sensei, Pamela Parks. Obviously, you're watching me on YouTube. You can reach me at studio-nemo.com. If you want to know my school address, you're going to have to sign up for the class. All right, so this is going to be an explanation of my thought process of how this way of doing things evolved. And it almost seems like it's getting harder and harder to capture students' attention nowadays. And sometimes I need to teach them a grammatical construct or some vocabulary words, and the students just aren't paying attention whatsoever. So we know that students need repeated contact with vocabulary words and grammar skills before they're internalized and memorized, and that's going to take more than one time. And if they're not paying attention, what are you going to do? We also know that words are learned much quicker if the vocabulary is learned in context. In other words, comprehensible input, which is why we read so much in class, right? I like this quote. Incidental learning of words during reading may be the easiest and single most powerful means of promoting large-scale vocabulary growth. I probably got this quoted out of a Bryce Hedstrom book, but this is W.E. Nagy and P.A. Herdman. Susie Pepper Rollins, who wrote Learning in the Fast Lane, she says it takes the average student 6 times to learn a word. And she's talking about students learning in English, and they already know English, and it takes 6 times. What do you think is going to happen to our students who are learning a truly foreign language? It's going to take more than 6 times. Other studies will say up to 21 times. But additionally, numerous studies have shown that if you can get your students to read, they're going to acquire vocabulary 7 to 9 times faster than other methods. And then I was also really struck by a lot of research that talks about the importance of handwriting. All right, now we're in the computer age, I know, and we're like, oh, it's so much easier. I don't want to read students' handwriting. It's so awful. But the fact of the matter is that there is a connection that's made when you are physically writing out the words. And I like this article here. I'll put the link in the description. This is why writing by hand beats typing for thinking and learning. There's just a lot of cognitive processes going on. Also, in the back of my mind, I had kicking around, I've got these books that I love to read to my students, and they have these comprehension questions at the end of each chapter. And they were fun for maybe the first 3 years I taught, and then I just kind of got bored of doing the comprehension questions. Because if you know how to game the system, you know how to answer these comprehension questions. They're pretty easy. So, I'd turn them into games and stuff, but still, like, Easy French Reader, I love this book. It's really cute. It's got a little, like, soap opera-like romance in it, and the students really get into it and everything. But comprehension questions they're dull, okay? Tom Alsop. I love Tom Alsop. I love this book, 21 mini cuentos. I've got it in French too, 21 mini contes. And I've even translated them into Japanese for my Japanese students because they're really cute stories. The comprehension questions, they're normal comprehension questions, okay? And even we do this in Japanese too, okay? You got your fill in the blanks. I put it the kanji right here, So there's that kicking around in my head. And there's also the fact that I hate to make photocopies. I'm still nursing a broken leg. Standing at the copy machine is really awful. And then, what I really hate is, I gotta make copies right today. I gotta run down before the bell rings and make the copies, and my students are gonna be standing out in the cold because I'm in a portable. And I hate that. Oh, and the copy machine's broken. So now I can't make copies, and everything I wanted to do today is ruined because I was depending on copies. So, this method that I'm using has kind of evolved around all of that. I'm going to reset this page for next time I do this. Okay, so again, this is my work in progress thinking. I've developed this method in order to give students a chance to play with the vocabulary that they've just read in their book of choice. So I've got student choice because the students get to choose the book that they're reading. That's the free voluntary reading or silent sustained reading. And they also get to choose what they do with that vocabulary, but I just want them playing with it. That's the most important thing, is they've got to play with the vocabulary, get their exposure to it, make it relevant to themselves. And my main goal is preparing my students for proficiency tests. So I've got really targeted things that I have them do with the vocabulary, but they've got free choice in how they do that. And they don't really know what I'm doing anyway. They just know it's kind of goofy and fun. There will be a quizzes at the end of this for when I give this actual speech, just to make sure, that's part of the accountability, I think. I'm hoping it's going to be a quizzes. I've been playing with quizzes, but if I can't get it to work on quizzes, then it's going to wind up being a Google form, the state says. All right, so the backstory is that I am on this absolutely amazing committee for the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, and this is the Statewide Proficiency Initiative for Languages and Learning, SPIL, and I'm having a ball here. I'm connecting with other teachers from around the state, and it's been really interesting. You teach and you're thinking about how your students learn, but you're not really thinking about, what's the big picture. And so I've really enjoyed seeing the big picture of everything. One of the things we've done on this committee is we got training for the stamp test. Now, I've sent so many students to take the stamp test, and I've trained so many students to take the stamp test because they've got their little practice test on the website. And so we kind of, this is going to be something like this. Try this, and gotten them ready for it. But I've never seen the other side of what is it like to grade this test. And that was truly eye-opening. So I started weaving that into all my free voluntary reading worksheets, which I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain everything, all my thought process and everything, how I got here. Because I'm sure you've got ideas too, and you can take the rudiments of this and take it in your own direction and make it work for you. All right, so in the stamp test, we're using, of course, the ACTFL guidelines, which I have to say, these are not standards. And I have to push back so many times when a principal starts talking to me about standards in my class. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't have standards, we have descriptors, okay? These are the descriptors, because our standards are basically, can you read it, can you write it, can you speak it, can you hear it? Those are our standards. And that's going to be for everything. If I'm teaching you how to go grocery shopping, can you read it, can you write it, can you speak it, can you hear it? If I'm teaching you how to buy clothes, can you read it, can you write it, can you speak it, can you hear it? If I'm teaching you about, my French class just went undersea to go meet Jacques-Yves Cousteau and rebuild Conch Shelf, and then they did a lab report on they were tracking glow squid and the habits of the glow squid. Could they read it? Could they write it? Could they speak it? Could they hear it? Okay. But what they do in there, how much they use the language, that's these descriptors. Okay. If they could only say a subject and a verb, and maybe the verb wasn't even conjugated correctly, they're down here. Okay. If they're talking about the glow squid at 7:45 a.m. we're heading east-southeast, and they were traveling in a group of 3, and they appeared to be eating the kelp, whatever, they'll be up higher, okay? These are just descriptors. They're not standards. All right, the next thing you need to know about me is I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese in a tiny portable. So my real estate is very cramped. You can see these are my French books. They're all on this side of the cart. And then when I want my Japanese books, I have to roll the cart around. And look, I was too lazy to even do it. I didn't even get the bottom shelf here. Okay, and then my Spanish books over here. And I want to for Spanish. I'm the only French teacher. I'm the only Japanese teacher. I can do whatever the heck I feel like. I'm one of 4 Spanish teachers, so we all have to follow a textbook. And so I had to make room on the shelf for the textbook. All right, so I got this from Bryce Hedstrom, who is absolutely one of my favorite. I just love him to pieces. And he's got this little thing that I always post on the board when we're doing our silent sustained reading, or FVR. Okay, here are the rules. You choose a book, and then you stick with that book. If you finish it, you read it again. Okay, you chose something that was too easy, go back to page 1 and read it again. You're going to get more out of it the second time than the first time. You chose a book that's too hard, well, you're just going to slog through it today. And then tomorrow, don't choose a book that's too hard. Chose a book that's boring. Sorry, you got that book. Just look at the pictures and appreciate it, and make up stories in your head. Whatever. No getting new books, okay? No bathroom passes. Oh my gosh, so many students start to ask me, oh, can I go to the bathroom? No, this is important. I want the students to know this is important. You should have gone before class started. You can go after the timer goes off. Right now, you are reading because I said that reading is important, and I've explained to you that reading is important, and I'm going to explain it again, and I'm going to explain it again and again and again with a smile on my face, because some students don't get it immediately. It's going to take that repetition before they understand reading is important, and you're going to learn faster, and trust me on this. Don't get up out of your seat for any reason. Don't throw away trash. Don't sharpen pencils. Don't get something out of your backpack. You are in your seat reading. This is important. Don't talk to each other. No whispering. Don't put your head down and sleep. I'm going to give you 0 if you do that. Don't write. You're reading. Don't draw. You're reading. Why? Because we're reading. So again, I have to keep explaining to them that reading is important, especially in the first days that we do this. All right. Let me reiterate. Let me explain that this is not my entire class. I do not have my students reading for the entire class. This is 15 minutes tops. It is not the whole class time. I have other things I want to do in class. I run a game-based class, and I want to get to my games, by golly. So it's just 15 minutes right when the students come into class, and then we can get to working on the vocabulary, which they've just seen in their books. I'm not grading for perfection. I have 136 students. I don't want to read 136 pieces of paper, all in different handwritings. I know there are many teaching methods that I love to pieces. The audiolingual method I love to pieces. There's this idea of fossilization. If you don't correct a mistake immediately, it's going to get fossilized. And I do believe in that in certain circumstances. This is not one of those circumstances. This circumstance for me is just having students get exposure to the language and getting an opportunity to play with the language. So as long as they've done it, it goes in the grade book as full points. Okay, full points. If I ask 3 questions and they answered all 3 questions, I don't care if there's no subject-verb agreement, they get full points. If I ask 3 questions and they only answered 1 question, they're going to get 1 or 2 points. Okay, I'm just putting it in for completion. Bryce Hedstrom says he doesn't have his students do writing every single time. He only has it occasionally, and he's got this lovely rubric, and he's got a couple of the basic. He's got the dual entry reading journal, and then he's got some book reports, and they're really book reports. Okay, they're long. I find that if I don't have my students writing something every day, there's going to be a couple of fake readers in the class, in which case they're not getting too much out of it until they go back and look at those words. And also my whole point is to get students to play with the vocabulary. So I do have students do something every single day, but it's only a 5-minute quick write. It's not a big book report. They don't have to think about it too hard. I just want them, basically they're using the book as a scavenger hunt, and I will get into that, okay? And I just was in a class with Claudia Elliott, who's also amazing, and she was saying, yeah, if I don't have my students do something every day, there's no accountability. They're not gonna read. And I agree. So, okay, so once again, it's only 15 minutes of class time, which is about the length of this video so far, right? It's 5 to 10 minutes of reading, depending on how early in the year it is, what level the students are, and it's only 5 minutes of writing. Okay, so I'm going to pause here so that I can analyze what I just said here and decide if I want to keep it in this order or not, and then I'll make part 2 in a moment.